Welcome to Formed, where each week we navigate a relevant topic or question through honest conversations. We are three pastors with three different backgrounds on staff together at Irving Bible Church in Irving, Texas. We believe we are constantly being formed in the way of Jesus for the sake of the world, and we hope this podcast helps with that. So let's jump into this week's episode of Formed. Welcome back to another week of Formed. Barry's still on sabbatical. I don't know. He's probably surfing in the seas of somewhere across the pond. Actually, I think he is in Italy right now.
He's in Italy right now. Yeah.
Dang, enjoying it, living it up. Today we have a special guest, John Dyer.
Woo!
Hey, guys.
How are you doing, John? John is the... Get ready here.
Get ready.
Had to get his official title from Dallas Theological here, but he is the VP of Enrollment Services and Educational Technology. He is the Assistant Professor of Theological Studies.
That's right. You got it all. Semicolon and ampersand and all the things. Yep.
CVS receipt. He is the author of From the Garden to the City, and there's two versions of that, right?
Yeah, 2011 and 2022.
Updated version.
Yeah.
I think I read the first version of it. I don't think I read
Everything
the second
changed. So
Technology changed. The
That's
book
right.
changed. Yeah.
Yep.
He had two other things come out last year: Ecclesiology of the Digital Church and The People of the Screen.
That's right.
Can we get all of this off Amazon?
Yeah. It's all there. So, and I've got a little personal website. It's just j.hn.
Let's
So
go.
like John, but just like j.hn. You can find stuff there too.
We'll
Great.
talk to your agent.
That's right.
Thank
Please.
you for your agent
Please
for setting this interview up. No, it's today we're talking about AI, and AI is this subject right now that I literally checked my email while I was walking here, and Glue, it just I signed up for their newsletter stuff, and they just sent something about
Yeah.
the church and AI, and the church leaders signing up, learning more about it,
Yeah.
and so this is what we're going to talk about. When I think of technology and I think of where we're at in the digital age right now, if we want to say that, I think of John Dyer. So this is who I think of right here.
Listen to that.
wow.
Yeah.
And so today I kind of want to have a conversation that we can kind of just open up the door a little bit of what is AI. If people are listening to this and they're kind of like freaked out by it, they're kind of scared,
Yeah.
but kind of some people might be listening to it and like, man, I really like it. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Kind of the balance of it and all of that. So
Mhm.
that's the gist of the episode today. So let's start off. Sissy, what's AI? What's the history behind it?
We have the resident expert here. You're going to come to me, John. You got to
That
kick
was
it
a
off.
joke.
Yeah.
That was a joke.
Just need to Google that and you'll find out.
John,
ChatGPT.
give us, if somebody's listening to it right now and they're saying, all right, I've heard AI in the news. Give us what is AI and how long has it been around?
Yeah. So, one answer is that it's been around for a long time, since like 1940s in one way about how you look at it. Another way is that there's a bunch of new stuff that came out last year that we're all excited about. So the old stuff, if I just give a real brief history, I won't go full seminary on it, but
We're used to Barry.
yeah, if you saw that movie Imitation Game with Benedict Cumberbatch a couple years back, that's Alan Turing, and they were trying to crack the Nazi codes. They're building a machine that's like can do something faster than humans can. So that kicks off this discussion of what do we call this? Because we know that computers are good at doing math, but what do we call it when it's doing something that feels like more like a human task? And so in the 50s, John McCarthy comes up with this term, artificial intelligence. Some people want it to be called cybernetics. There's a big battle over terms, And so then as, computers get better and better, they're doing more things for us. And so through the 80s, 90s, the video game villains are getting smart, and they're doing other things like they're running our anti-lock brakes, and they're flying our planes, and just doing lots of little things in the background. And I think what happened is that in the last decade or so, the AI has kind of gone from being able to kind of follow a pattern to recognizing a pattern, which is a big deal, being able to read pictures and figure out who's in the picture. And then to this whole thing of like being able to generate something. So whether that's generating pictures or generating text, and all of a sudden everybody went like, whoa, something is really, really different. And that's kind of what, when you hear AI today, that's usually what people are talking about, is this ability for it to generate what seems like, thousands of hours of education or thousands of years of like artistry, that it's able to do all of this stuff.
So what's made it so more popular over the past like 12 months?
Well, I do think, every time there's something a little bit new that feels novel, it's just cool. And we get real excited about it for a little bit. So, last year it was the metaverse. That was the big talk, And then the year before that, it was all but the online, Zoom and online church and all the things that we were doing. So we do kind of flip from topic to topic. But I do think there's something in this where we know that computers can do some things faster than us, do math, and it can calculate the trajectory of a missile or whatever it is. But I think that just being able to type in something in a chat-like interface, that was part of the genius of what OpenAI did last year, is that they had all these tools have been around for a long time that could generate text. But when they made it look like a conversation, that's what suddenly made it feel like I'm talking to a real
person.
Yeah, this is a robot. Yeah. And so going back to Alan Turing, the guy that cracked the Nazi code, he had this Turing test idea back in the 50s that if you could make it something where a person couldn't tell if it was behind a wall, if there was a computer or a person there, then all of a sudden we would have reached some area. And I think a lot of people felt like we reached that with this. And so it felt really interesting. It made a few errors like that. Like it would misspell a couple things, but for the most part, it was pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, I mean, we use AI all the time. Everyday, ordinary lives. When you're on Amazon or Netflix or Googling something, we're using AI.
Yeah.
But the difference now is it's able to, and like I just played around like yesterday, I spent like hours on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Because first I was like, this isn't a big deal. And now I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, you can write a sermon out of it, right? It's not a very good sermon, I would say. But I mean, I used it. I'm looking for a turntable and I just put in, hey, tell me what the best starter turntable is. And it gave me all this stuff instead of me doing all this research that I'd normally do and going to all these different sites. It combs the entire internet, generates like new original data, like the fact that you can come up with music or videos or a sermon, right? It does all this that before we would spend hours working on. That in a matter of seconds, it's able to do that. And it's what you said, the interface idea that I'm just putting in some prompts and it's able to do that. It's very, it's something we haven't seen before. And I feel like, I don't know enough about technology, John, this is you, but it's almost like we're on the cusp of something, like we're on the edge of something that's going to take us to a place that we're not even sure of. And that's maybe why, well, what's going on? This feels very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think there has been that belief that technology is going to take us to this new place.
Yes.
They're always, and it's a pretty pervasive, even if you track the last like 1,000 years, there's almost this like mirroring of technology and theology where we start to think about it as kind of in salvific terms, like if only this comes, then the thing, And so it has that feeling of being on the cusp of something huge. And there is all this talk about this idea of a singularity that, one day we'll make something that is as smart as us.
Yeah.
And it will then be able to make something a little smarter than us. And that thing will go and it will become this like huge wave upward. And, if we do track our technology, it is kind of making this big curve upward. But there's this thought that suddenly, all of a sudden, it'll, solve global warming and solve immigration and solve every problem that we have. And that's probably a little bit of a false hope, but there is that exciting feeling. And I think because, a lot of programming is just kind of like if then, it's very logical and you can kind of follow it. You can't really follow what it's doing here. There's just enough of this randomness or stochasticity, to use the fancy term, that it feels alive, when you're doing it and it feels exciting.
Right.
I think too, the old movie I, Robot with Will Smith, back when it was cool for Will Smith to like smack something. But yeah, it's like, I remember that movie came out when I feel like I was smaller, and it's like, oh, that's going to be the future one day. And they're still not robots like walking around, but we talk about AI with our communications team. Here and there, we just like, hey, what's the ethics behind how far to take some of it? Because some people use it for emails and e-letters and ChatGPT, and I've been playing around on Midjourney and some of the graphics and stuff on that. I use sometimes whenever one of our producers can't do some clips for socials, I have an AI program that I just insert the whole video and it cranks out 10 different clips for socials that is ready for, and it breaks it down like, here's the hook, they're talking about the church here, and just in a snap of a fingers. So how do we I think I worded it this way: how do we leverage the capabilities and avoid the dangers of AI?
Oh, that's an easy one. So let's just break it down. No, that's always the question when a new technology comes along. And I think one good thing about a new technology is it kind of functions like the old technology of a mirror, that it helps us see ourselves differently, ask some new questions. It even helps us ask questions about what we've been doing, like what we assumed for a long time. So for example, like tools like Logos Bible Software, they've had a sermon builder for a long time, and they just didn't brand it AI. And so we didn't worry about it.
Right.
And so we're trying to think of, how am I using all these tools to do things like sermons or other ethical things? What am I drawing on? So what I usually do, what I kind of encourage people to do, is to think about it kind of like a little grid of 4 boxes. So I would say like the kind of intentional layer and the unintentional layer, and then good and bad. So when I put things in there, I'm thinking about like an intentionally good thing I can do with an intentionally bad thing. And I also want to think about the things that are happening that, maybe just happen as the result of the formation of doing a thing repeatedly, or just a side effect that I didn't really think about ahead of time. So there's this funny little verse in Deuteronomy. So you guys want to go Deuteronomy for a second?
Let's go.
Okay.
Wow.
Deuteronomy, we're going to do this. Deuteronomy 22:8.
Is this an AI reference?
Well, no, Joshua 8. Joshua goes and he attacks the village of Ai. So we can do that. You guys were waiting for it. We had to cover that dad joke.
Does it have a y'all in that one? Or?
No. But so the one in Deuteronomy, it's just a random set of laws, and it's got this great thing. It says, when you build a house, or when you build a new house, build a parapet around the top, so that no one falls off and the guilt of the bloodshed falls on your house. What I love about that is it's assuming that you're going to build, right? That we are creators. As we're in the image of God, we're going to make stuff. It's assuming that you're going to make a new house, like something for human flourishing, right? Not something destructive, something good. But it's also saying that we have a responsibility to think through some of the ways that it could even be accidentally used to hurt somebody. And that guilt falls on not only the technology itself, the house, but also kind of metaphorically our house, right? Our home, who we are. So I think we do have the responsibility to do what we're doing right now, to think it through. So, the good uses, I think we're always able to speed up some activity that we could do and come up with something that would help us. I've seen some neat tools for, taking a sermon and turning it into a bunch of questions that you could hand to small groups. Oh, that's a neat thing. And then we know there's all kinds of exploitive ways to use technology poorly. So we could it's pretty easy to fill in the bad use. It's that underlying one that's a little harder for us to think about, I think. What are some of the things that we didn't expect happening with it? So I usually give the example, I do this in everything, of using a shovel. So you dig a hole, and you can use it for good or you can use it for bad. You can axe murder, you can build a church, but either way you get blisters at the end of the day. So you're trying to figure out, what is the sort of blistering or callousing that happens? And I think I'll just give one example is, I think there could be a great place for, say, hey, let me just think up some outline ideas for a talk I'm going to give. But if I want to be the kind of person who can generate that outline myself, then I probably don't want to become overly dependent on that tool to do that thing. So my question for myself is, who do I want to become, and who do I want my community to become?
Sure.
And when is the technology going to help me in that direction or not? So,
I think one of the things that you said that reminded me of is that this is a tool that forms us.
Yeah.
And how is it forming us? I think that's a great question to ask.
Great podcast name. Like talking about formation.
Yeah. So we worked that in there. The one thing I'd add though is, oftentimes I think what the church has done is we see technology as a source of fear. And so we're just going to ignore it. We're going to avoid it. We're going to stick our heads in the sand, and this isn't happening. And it's happening. It's already happening. And so we can't do that. But I think it's just what you said, like, how do we look at it as a tool, evaluate what is a good use of this technology? How's it going to help us? And be thoughtful and prayerful about that. And also have an honest conversation, especially when it comes to AI, about how are we using this? I think a lot of times we tend to avoid those kind of conversations instead of saying, no, let's just talk about it. This could be helpful to us. How could we do that?
Can y'all, I don't know, there's no easy way for me to ask this. Could y'all speak on when the internet came to be?
I already know where you're going.
Oh yeah, let's do this. Let's go.
I'm trying to think of something technology.
You weren't born then, so
so good.
Like when the internet came to be, was there similar conversations happening then of ooh, is this what is this? How are we going to use this type of thing?
You can't even say.
That's so good. So in 1995,
yes,
when the internet became publicly available, I think there was a lot of, and there's always that, there's a few contingent of people doing churchy things. So I think the first recorded online church service is like 1980. So it's been happening for a long time.
Yeah.
Someone trying to do something religious online. And then there's a lot of people just trying to figure out what it was. But I don't think anybody really thought that we would be sitting around ordering stuff on Amazon and not go to the store. Sure. And that, I was telling the folks here that there used to be a Barnes & Noble here in Irving that was right in the center of town, and it's not there because we all order online. And so I don't think we really thought through those kind of shockwave effects. I think, Sissy, to go back to your point, a lot of times what we do is we focus on that kind of moral layer, like every new technology is used for the latest pornography or something like that. And that's an exploitive, terrible thing. It destroys people on both ends of the camera. We should talk about that. But sometimes as Christians, we focus only on that and not at these more subtle, formative things for us individually, and then also our communities and our churches. And so I think that's the conversation that really requires a community to do. And so much of our modern technology is so individualized. So we customize the apps on our phone and background. And so everything becomes more and more narrow and more focused on me. And, in those theological terms, it's the flesh, right? That incurvature of the soul. And so we got to break that back out and say, hey, what do you notice in me when am I using this a little bit too much? Or did that sermon sound like a robot? Whatever that question is. And so doing this is so helpful.
I know you touched on this a little bit ago, but what are some ways some churches are leveraging AI right now for the good?
Yeah, a couple of tools I just saw recently, like one of them was called Pulpit AI, actually from a guy that was from around Irving and now is was one of Nat Pugh's disciples and is now out in California. And his goal was just to have it, take a sermon audio, transcribe that, like I said earlier, create questions for small groups. And so, the pastor focuses on creating the sermon, but then that secondary content it would produce. And pretty quickly, people looked at it and thought it was generating the sermon itself and got real mad, like not understanding the technology first and thinking through the side notes. I got a note from someone doing some apologetics work, trying to train an LLM to be able to answer questions. Seen some really good, mental health things that, even though I think we would all say that having a physical person with you in a time of trauma would be more important, that there's still at least some level of interaction that is helpful to someone that might not feel comfortable or there's not time or something like that. There's been a lot of tool, previous to the sort of chat technology, people buying up, AdWords for, kind of bad searches and then trying to say like, well, Jesus has the answer or something like that. Sure. And believe it or not, that there's a good response to that, because sometimes when someone's looking for something really, really dark, they are looking for something else. And there's sort of the cheesy version of that and the deeper version of that. And then using all the AI tools to say, okay, now we've got this person online. They've interacted with it. Now let's connect them with the local pastor that's in his or her area. So I think there's a lot of neat kind of underground, less popular technology stuff where people are really trying to use the technology then to bring you all the way for full circle back into person-to-person
It's an on-ramp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think content creation is the first thing we think of. You just mentioned how you're able to pull clips from videos and how long would that have taken you before, and now you can just use AI to do that. But all sorts of content creation, especially churches that maybe don't have a design team or have a smaller budget. I could see how that could be super helpful in terms of videos and music, announcements and things like that, where it can pull from and look at patterns and structures and say, well, this could be a good starting point. And that's the thing. It's a tool. So it could give you some helpful information. So yesterday I was putting together an email for a specific thing, and I was like, man, I don't know exactly how to say this in a way that's going to be helpful. I put it into ChatGPT, and I was like, well, this isn't what I would say, but it gave me a good starting point to say, okay, something like that. I can rephrase this, but I could start with this in addressing this, candidate that's interviewing for us.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have some friends that work in just totally different, fields of work that they use ChatGPT for almost all their emails.
Yeah.
And it's just like, hey, email this person about this or write an email. And it's like, bam, here you go. And it's just, that's how they use it.
Yeah. And one of our pastors was telling me that they didn't have small group questions, discussion questions for small groups. And so just kind of put that in, and he's like, and it gave me some really great questions.
Yeah.
So things like that might be helpful.
So let's flip it. What's some of the dangers that we've seen or we're worried about with the church?
Well, I think so. this is almost the tip of the spear, the end of a long thing that's been happening, I think, sometimes particularly in evangelical churches, where what we do as a church feels like content creation and consumption. So what we're doing right now, we're producing a podcast. This is meant to be content, right?
Yes.
This is, we're not, there's nobody here. We're recording this for later consumption, right? But that's not really what I think church is. The church is not just a local content distributor, you know? Right. And so if we begin to think of ourselves in primarily those terms, as we generate emails for people, we generate texts, we generate content that happens to be delivered in this 25-minute thing on Sunday, but really is built for consumption, then we basically have become consumers, right? And we're training our people to be consumers, and we're training ourselves to produce things that can be consumed. And so that's the kind of like attitudinal underlying thing that we want to be careful of, is saying, what do we actually do here? What is the church? What is our local church? What is the church universal? And how do we kind of pull back to some of that stuff? And then we can say, I think there is a place for content. I mean, certainly some of what the Christian message, the gospel is content that how will they know unless they hear, right? So we do want to communicate that, but we don't want to be kind of playing into consumer culture. And so if we're thinking, man, at the same time, if I'm a pastor and I've got 40 or 50 hours of work and it takes me X amount of time to produce this content, maybe if I can kind of make that a little bit more efficient, some of the elements of that gives me time to do two things. One, to be physically with a person in a hospital or in a jail or something like that. Or to say, can I take this content that's been a little bit more generated, and how do I really breathe this into my community, what they need to hear, so that it's not just this generic ChatGPT style, 4-point outline, but this is really about, what does Irving Bible Church need to hear in this Sunday? And what are we called to as a people? What is our mission and vision? Now, looking up a bunch of commentaries and finding the book on the shelf, if a robot can take the book off the shelf effectively and open it up and summarize some of that for me, that's really rich. I do think that at the same time, that connection that happens when the Word of God speaks kind of through the Spirit, through a person to a people, that moment needs to be something that's more than just pressing play on a camera. And I think that's what we want to hold on to.
I think it was Russell Moore, and I'm going to paraphrase this. He said something like, a chatbot can do research, chatbot can write, but a chatbot can't preach, because there's something that happens with the proclamation of God's word that AI can't do. And I thought that was really good, because I think these tools are really helpful in sermon research and all of that. And yet, the impact on our spiritual experience can't be compromised. And that's what we have to be careful about. I saw recently, I'm sure you both saw, there was a church service in Germany that was completely led by AI, which is crazy. I sent that article, and I saw a quick clip of it, and I was like, this is like, I can't believe this is happening. But
it was horrible.
It was horrible. Yes. It was horrible. And but there you see the loss of the spiritual component, the emotional component that is part of the embodied human experience that AI can't do. I think the other issue I would bring up would be AI is a tool, and as we rely on that, if we over rely on that, it's almost as if we become less human in the sense that we're allowing it to do the thinking for us instead of using it as a tool. And it's almost in a way reversing the progress of human knowledge. And I think this is a tool. I think it can be a good tool if used for the good purposes. We've got a mandate for creation and to work for human flourishing and all of that. So technology, I think, is good in it. And yet, if we don't use it in ways that are malforming us, that's where the problem comes up.
How do we view technology through the lens of Scripture?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you're reading some of those books before, that book From the Garden to the City, that the arc of that is to say that God built a garden for us, put a bunch of raw materials there, and the story of Scripture moves toward this formation of a city. And there's all kinds of little bits along the way, but I really think that when you just you start out with Genesis 1 and 2, you've got God's kind of saying, Adam and Eve, I want you to just make from what I've made. I want you to become the kinds of creators that I am. I want you to take what I've made and make new things from it. And I think about my own kids when they were little, and I'd dump a box of Legos on the ground, and I just delight in what they make. And I think God delights in what we make too. And, you know, throughout the story, you see these places where I think God uses human creations where he doesn't need to. So like the story of Noah, for example, where, you know, he could levitate them, he can do whatever he wants, but he makes human making this core part of salvation. And it makes it even look forward to Jesus, where this righteous man is on an object of wood. And so we can go through lots of the stories, even in the 10 Commandments. The first one is about who God is. There's no other God but me. But the next one is about how we use media to portray that, so we don't make any graven images. And he could have said, here's an exact graven image to make, but he chose not to say, I'm not like the other gods, and I can't be contained in this little thing. So the way we use or don't use media is built in the 10 Commandments, right? Mm-hmm. And then you move forward to Jesus, and you know the kind of one of the titles that he gets in scripture is the word tectone. So it's the Greek word from which we get technology. And it means an artisan or a craftsperson, someone who makes something with their hands. And we think that the kind of artisan or craftsperson that his dad was a carpenter. So we translate tectone as carpenter. So you've got Jesus there, you know, he is the eternal Son of God who made the world, and then his creation turns on him. And then you've got this Jesus of Nazareth who works with wood and nails, and then wood and nails are what he dies on. Just fascinating, right? That God would say, he could have been killed in any number of ways, but I'm going to make human making part of the story. And then we zoom to the end of the story. And, you know, I grew up in a church that said, you know, you go to heaven, right? And you actually read the Bible and you don't go to heaven, right? That God makes a city full of all the things that we make, roads and trumpets and banners, and that comes down out of heaven. And someone has to make the chair, and someone has to have the table, all those things that we think of as life today. That when you look in the scriptures, God doesn't want to destroy those things. He wants to take, you know, swords and bend them into plowshares. He wants to say, these things that you meant for destruction, I want to transform and redeem them. So I think what that's telling us is that God wants to save our souls. We all know that. God wants to resurrect our bodies, but God cares about the things we make, and that's going to be part of his redemptive plan. So for us, that means how do I use technology today in light of that day? And how do I not only, you know, make and do things that would be honoring to him, but how do I also think about its kind of subtle formative aspects? So I've got the tool and what it does, but I have these sub things that are happening to me and my community at the same time. And that really takes a lot of wisdom and community to think through.
Yeah. What do I do with the tool, and what is the tool doing to me?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
You got anything else you want to throw out about AI, or somebody's listening to this and they're like, let's end on this before you turn to something fun. Because I'm fascinated. You have a berry bot, and I got to see how this berry bot works here in a second. But just a last word to the person that's listening to this, and they've maybe just heard a lot for the first time about AI in general, and they're kind of just uneasy about it. And they're just kind of like, man, I'm seeing the bad stuff about it. I'm hearing some good stuff too. And just an overall general approach to when they hear, I mean, I think this is only going to get more and more popular, more and more integrated into what we do. Yeah. Of just how your advice to them on how the next future will be.
I mean, a real simple thing is just to try it and then have a conversation with someone about it. You know, those two things have just, there's a kinds of knowledge that only comes in doing. So it's kind of that tacit knowledge, things that are hard to describe, like the sound of a tuba, you know, you just kind of have to hear it and know it. So I think trying it out is really important. But then I think having that outlet to say, let's talk with somebody else who tried it and just have a conversation and figure that out. Those two things right away, I think, can be really, really helpful. And I would say more specifically, if you can try some type of text generation, some type of image generation, just to see where those two things are, and then reflect upon it with someone.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so when you first sat down, we were talking about, and you're like, hey, I have a berry bot.
You've created a berry bot.
I did. You know, our Pastor Barry's on sabbatical. And so I thought, well, what if I fed a large language model, an LLM, some of his more recent sermons from the last couple months, and just want to see if I ask it a question, what would it say?
So you uploaded all of his past sermons from this past
year. Just from 2023. So just a few months before he went on sabbatical.
So you can type in a question and then it will spout out an answer as the berry bot. I'm picturing like the like Santa Claus 3, I think, when the robot comes out and it's like the fake Tim Allen Santa. This is what I'm thinking about here.
No, I didn't do the voice part or the face part, just the text part, but next time.
Okay, so let's ask her a question. Let's ask the berry bot a question.
Let's go.
Let's ask something about Sabbath, because I feel like Barry talks about Sabbath a lot.
Okay.
Let's do, why is Sabbath important?
Why is Sabbath important?
I can't remember how many times he talked about Sabbath this year, but
okay. Well, let's see. I remember this is doing the thing where it's drawing from the internet and then drawing some from Barry. So we don't know. So this may sound like Barry or may not. We'll just wait and give it a shot. Okay, so the Sabbath is important because it's a day of rest and worship that God commanded in the Bible. It is a time set apart for us to cease from our regular work and busyness and to focus on our relationship with God and our spiritual well-being. Observing the Sabbath allows us to recharge physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It provides an opportunity to prioritize our relationship with God, to reflect on His goodness, and to find rest and renewal in His presence. Oh, rest and renewal.
Yeah,
that was Barry.
That's Barry.
Yeah,
that's Barry.
And the little 3 step. I mean, he's a good. Yeah, it had some good structure.
Could you ask one more question?
Okay, sure.
Who is Dallas Willard?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know if did he talk about.
I'm not sure he quoted much
Willard.
Willard.
We'll see. Yeah, it just kind of gives a generic Dallas Willard.
That's more the internet than Barry.
Yeah, but it's fun.
Some of the that we're going back to the dangerous part. One of the dangers that does scare me about some is some of the deepfake stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
Of how it can generate images of anybody in the world, and it looks
saying, doing, all sorts of things.
Doing. And even some of the speech stuff, like I was telling John before this, I was going to prank you on here because I was looking into some of these like speech AI stuff to where you can upload messages and then it has like their voice.
Yeah.
And then you can just type in whatever you want. So I was going to type in a thing of like, hey, Philly's better than New York. And
anyway, that's just hard enough to do now. So the image generation, the text generation, that's pretty easy. Almost anybody can do it.
But the
thing where you take a couple pictures and the voice and do the whole package, that probably is going to be another year or two. But man, at that point, I'd feel like we're going to be where we really can't trust much of anything. And that's a pretty big deal.
It's going to be scary.
And I think, can I give you another verse for that though?
Yeah.
So, one of the most often repeated commandments in the Old Testament is this idea of unjust scales. It says God hates or detests, unjust weights or something like that. I think it's a really good reminder to us that, an individual technology or tool like a sword, you can kill a person, but tools that are scales that work at scale, you can affect, thousands and tens of thousands of people. And I think that's really where we are with technology. I think that's the part of it that's scarier, is that these things can affect whole cultures, whole societies. And I think we see a lot of that with misinformation right now. That's probably the biggest thing is in 1995, back in the 1900s, we thought that the information, highway was going to be this thing where we'd all get information. And now it's, flooded with misinformation and mistrust. And that's one of those larger cultural changes that we're going through is who do we trust? And again, that kind of comes back to us as a people of God, as a church, of saying, this is a place that I can trust because I know these people. I can see them, I can touch them, I can have coffee with them. They're not just content generators. I can get that anywhere. But and I can get juice and crackers anywhere, right? But I can't have that with somebody except in this place. And that's what I think the church needs to be, is that beacon for people.
That's good.
Okay, at the end of each episode, we have some like fun banter. I mean, we talk about some random stuff sometimes.
Okay.
Real quick, do you like Peeps?
Oh. No, I don't.
Okay, good.
It's okay, John.
You're on the right side of history.
I mean, I'll try anything once or twice. I really like.
It's
if there's
a once
flavor,
a year at Easter candy that I enjoy, John.
Yeah, no, that's good.
You tweeted about a fish truck the other day that I want to try this thing.
Princess Diana's chef, man, made a fish truck in Texas.
Is that right?
It's called a fish trailer, I should say. Or a food trailer, not a food truck.
Food trailer.
Very British. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a technology quiz that I found that you guys can be partners together.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, here we go. Current richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, is the president of what retailer?
Amazon.
Okay. Bingo.
Good job there.
We're one for one.
Which social media app only lets you view pictures and messages for a limited time?
Snapchat? Or BeReal?
Good job. Yeah, Snapchat. Do you have a BeReal?
I don't.
No.
Okay.
I have a bunch of them that I'll make them and then I'll just delete them. So, yeah.
Let's see what they are. What does a Geiger counter measure?
Radiation?
Oh, okay. I didn't know this one.
I've heard of that, but I don't know.
You guys not seen Ghostbusters? Like literally every 80s movie ever with like
Isaac will tell us he
Russian
wasn't born
plots.
then or something.
This was before.
Yes.
Which prestigious university did Microsoft founder Bill Gates drop out of?
I think Harvard.
Harvard it is.
Ah, look at that.
What year did the first Apple iPhone launch?
2007.
Wow.
John's on it. Thank God we're partnering.
So rich.
What does CPU stand for, Sissy?
Central Processing Unit. Is that right?
Yeah, let's go. Created in 1990. That was the year I was born. What was the name of the first internet search engine?
Netscape.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Is that it?
It says Archie.
Okay. Yeah. Something Tim Berners-Lee made.
Sounds
like
like
that.
no, that is false. Was electronics company Nintendo founded in 89, 46, or 75?
The oldest, whatever that was.
1889.
Oh, you said 89 like as if it was like,
sorry.
He's just
like after Mario Brothers came out. Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
Yes, definitely. It's very, very old.
From 2017 onwards, how many characters long can tweets be?
217 onwards?
It's 280. It went from 140 to 280, right?
Yeah.
And now it's like infinite.
Up to 280. Some of those tweets now are pretty.
They're not tweets. Yeah.
Yes.
What does the term laser stand for?
Oh, I can't remember.
Ooh, I don't know.
Light assisted Zion energy signal.
Light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. I never knew laser was
like an acronym.
Yeah, an acronym.
That's insane. All right, last one.
Okay.
Originally, Amazon only sold which product?
Coffee. Just kidding. What was it?
Books?
Books it is.
Yeah, that's right.
The technology
That's so
guru.
good.
Sissy.
That's what I call myself.
Guys,
So
thank
good.
you so much.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, John, for
Thanks for having me, guys.
taking time out of your schedule. John, you also created a version of the Bible called the Y'all version.
That's right.
Is that really what's called? The
Yeah.
Y'all
Yeah.
version?
Yeah.
Can you explain it real quick at the end?
Yeah. Well, in Greek and Hebrew, in most languages of the world, there's a different word for you singular
Mhm.
and you plural. But in modern English, we don't have that. We used to, but we lost it. And so now we just say you for groups and you for individuals. Well, in the South, we fixed that, right? We have the word y'all. So there's you version, the awesome tool for reading your Bible, and there's y'all version. So it goes in there and it shows you all those places and corrects them all. So it ruins a lot of really great verses. Like I know the plans I had for y'all. And so it's no longer a high school graduation or at least a t-shirt one, but it really does bring a community aspect back to what we're seeing. And it's fun. So yeah,
where can we access the Y'all version?
Y'allversion.com.
Oh, let's go.
You can also do worship.ai if you would like to generate some worship lyrics and give them over to Crystal. Fun. Or Bible reading plan generator. You can have AI generate a Bible plan for you.
Super helpful.
All kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah.
That's really cool. All right, John, thank you.
Yeah,
Sissy, thank you. Guys, we'll be back next week for another week of Formed.